The grand hotel lobby was glowing that evening. Golden lights shone from the chandeliers above. A soft piano tune drifted in the air. The smell of expensive perfume and wine mixed with the faint fragrance of polished wood. Rich guests filled the space, dressed in gowns and suits. They laughed, they clinked glasses, and they spoke loudly, as if the entire world belonged to them. The staff moved quietly, almost invisible maids carrying trays, waiters refilling glasses, bellboys rolling luggage carts, and then she walked in. The young maid, her skin dark, her uniform simple. She carried a stack of towels pressed against her chest. Her steps were small, careful, but steady. She did not look at the guests. She kept her eyes low as she had been trained to. At first, no one noticed her. But then one rich lady sitting near the fountain spotted her. The lady's lips curled into a smirk. She leaned closer to the man beside her and whispered, but her voice was sharp enough to be heard. "Look at her, in this lobby. It's like she belongs here." The man chuckled, swirling his wine glass. Another guest joined in, shaking his head. "Luxury hotel is no place for it. She should stay out of sight." The whispers grew into small laughs. One woman, her necklace sparkling like ice, snapped her fingers. She waved at a waiter and said loudly, "Why is she here? Don't they have back doors for staff?" The maid heard every word. Her shoulders stiffened. Her fingers pressed tighter against the towels. But she kept walking. Quiet, obedient. Her eyes stayed down. The laughter spread. Like a cruel fire, it passed from table to table. Some guests covered their mouths, pretending to whisper. Others made no effort to hide their mocking. "She doesn't fit here. She spoils the view. Such people, they don't understand." Class, each word landed heavy on her chest. Her heart beat faster, but her face did not change. She had learned to hide her pain, to bury it deep. Near the reception desk, the hotel manager stood. He was a tall man in a navy blue suit. He'd been watching the scene unfold. His face looked pale. He could hear the complaints growing louder. The guests were not stopping. Their voices were rising, echoing across the lobby. The piano player even hesitated for a moment, pressing the wrong key, because the tension was so sharp. The manager adjusted his tie nervously. He knew the rules of the hotel guests always came first. A single complaint from a wealthy visitor could mean trouble. And here were not one or two, but many. His palms grew damp. He looked at the maid again. She was moving toward the elevator, trying to disappear before the scene grew worse. But the guests would not let it go. The woman with the icy necklace raised, her voice even louder. "This is ridiculous. We pay thousands to stay here." And they let her. "Walk in front of us? It ruins the luxury?" A few other guests clapped their hands in agreement. Yes, call the manager. She should be removed." The maid stopped in her tracks. Her body froze. The towels in her hands felt heavier now. She wanted to run, but her feet stayed. Glued to the marble floor, the manager swallowed hard. His heart pounded. He knew all eyes were now turning to him. The guests expected him to act. One man with gray hair slicked back pointed directly at the maid. "You, manager, do your job. Send her out. This is a place for us, not for her kind." The lobby went quiet for a second. Only the fountain kept trickling water. Every guest waited for the manager's response. The maid could feel their eyes, drilling into her skin. Her throat tightened. Her vision blurred for a moment, but she blinked quickly. She would not let them see her tears. Not yet. The manager took a step forward, then another. His polished shoes clicked on the marble. Step by step he moved toward her. His face showed a nervous smile, but his eyes were full of worry. He wanted to speak gently, but his voice came out stiff. "Excuse me? May I have a word?" The guests leaned closer, eager to watch the scene. Some smirked, some folded their arms, satisfied. They wanted to see her gone. The maid turned her head slightly, her lips trembling, but she said nothing. She just waited, towels clutched against her chest. Her breathing shallow, the manager stopped just a few steps away from her. His hands twisted. Together, he lowered his voice, though it was still loud enough for the guests to hear. "You should leave the lobby for now. Please, it's causing some discomfort." The words pierced her like a blade. She lowered her head even more. Staring at the floor, her reflection looked back at her in the polished marble tiles. Small, tired, humiliated. The guests behind them chuckled in victory. That's better. Finally, someone listens. This is how order is kept. The maid's hands shook. A towel slipped slightly from the stack, almost falling. She quickly caught it, pressing it tighter against her chest. Her arms ached, but not as much as her heart. Inside her mind, a storm was raging. Every cruel word repeated again and again. She doesn't belong. She should leave. She ruins the view. But behind her lowered eyes, something else flickered. A spark. A secret no one knew. The manager stepped aside, giving her a path toward the staff door. He gestured politely, trying to keep the scene calm. Please. Just for now. The maid nodded once, slowly. Her lips pressed tightly together, holding back the words she wanted to scream. She walked toward the staff door. Every step felt like walking through fire. The guests watched her go, smug smiles on their faces. One woman whispered, "Good riddance." Another man muttered, "Order is restored." But they had no idea. No idea who she really was. No idea what power she carried. And no idea how soon the lobby would belong to her. As the staff door closed softly behind her, the laughter of the guests filled the air again. But for the manager, the sound was not pleasant. He looked down the hallway where she had disappeared. His chest tightened. Something about the way she held her head. Something about the silence in her eyes. It unsettled him. The guests thought the matter was over. But the story was only beginning. The staff door closed softly behind her. On the other side of the wall, laughter still rang from the lobby. The voices of the rich guests echoed like cruel bells in her ears. She leaned against the wall for a second, her eyes closed. Her arms still hugged the stack of towels tightly against her chest, though they felt heavier now. The hallway was dim, lined with service carts and mop buckets. It smelled faintly of bleach and soap. Here away from the golden chandeliers, the hotel looked plain, almost forgotten. But to her it was familiar. This was the world she lived in every day. She began to walk slowly, her shoes quiet on the tiled floor. Her breath trembled. Her chest rose and fell quickly, as if she had run a mile. Inside her mind, the words of the guests replayed again and again. She doesn't belong. She ruins the view. She should be removed. Each word was a thorn, cutting deeper. But still, she walked straight. Her back remained upright. She would not allow herself to break. Not here, not now. Two maids appeared from a side room carrying sheets. When they saw her, their eyes widened. They exchanged quick glances, then lowered their voices. "Did you hear?" one whispered. They sent her out of the lobby. The other maid shook her head, pity in her eyes. They always target her. It's cruel. She doesn't fight back at all. The first maid frowned. Sometimes I wonder, why does she stay silent? Why doesn't she tell them who she really is? The second maid's eyes darted around nervously. Don't talk too loud. Walls have ears in this place. They both fell silent as she passed by. She kept walking, her face calm as if she hadn't heard. But inside, her heart tightened at their words. She entered the laundry room, a small space filled with machines, baskets of clothes, and the constant hum of dryers. The warmth inside wrapped around her, but it didn't comfort her. She placed the towels on a shelf and finally let her shoulders drop, for the first time since. Stepping into the lobby, her mask cracked. Her lips trembled. Her eyes watered. A single tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. But she quickly wiped it away. "No," she whispered to herself. "Not now. Not yet." She sat on a wooden bench in the corner of the room. Of her uniform, she pulled out a small leather notebook. It looked old, its corners worn, its cover scratched. She opened it carefully, as if it were fragile. Inside were papers, contracts, signatures, legal seals. Her fingers brushed over the ink gently. Her lips curved into a faint, secret smile. This book was her strength. This was the reason she endured the insults. Every cruel word she swallowed was fuel. Every humiliation brought her closer to the moment she had been waiting for. a moment that would arrive sooner than anyone expected. Meanwhile, in the lobby, the guests were still talking. The piano music had resumed, but their voices were louder than the melody. One man raised his glass and said proudly, "Order has been restored. No more distractions." "This is how a luxury place should be." The woman with the icy necklace nodded. "Exactly. I pay for class, not for discomfort." Others laughed. They felt powerful, as if they had won a small battle. They believed their money gave them the right to control everything around them, then the dignity of another human being. The hotel manager stood nearby, a smile frozen in place. He poured drinks for them, nodded politely, and tried to hide the unease in his chest. But inside, he felt heavy. He replayed the image of the maid's face when he asked her to leave. Her silence, her lowered eyes. And yet, there was something strange in the way she looked at him. Not weak, not broken. It was as if she knew something he didn't. The thought made him uneasy. One of the rich men clapped the manager on the back. "You did. Well, guests come first. Always remember that." The manager forced a smile, but his stomach churned. He bowed slightly and excused himself, walking toward his office. Back in the laundry room, the maid closed the notebook and tucked it safely into her pocket again. Her breathing had steadied. Her tears were gone. Now her eyes glowed with quiet determination. She rose from the bench and began folding towels, her hands moving with practiced skill. Other maids came in and out, busy with their tasks. Some whispered about her, casting curious glances. One brave maid finally asked, "Why don't you ever fight back? They treat you like dirt, but you stay quiet." "Why?" The young maid paused. She looked at the girl, then gave a soft smile. "Because silence can be stronger than noise," she said quietly. "The right moment has not yet arrived." The other maid frowned, not understanding, but she said nothing more. The young maid returned to her work, folding each towel neatly, placing them in stacks. Her mind, however, was far away. She thought of her father, of the promises he had made. She thought of the papers in her pocket, the proof of everything. She thought of the guests in the lobby, laughing now, unaware of the storm waiting. Just behind the walls, she whispered to herself, "Let them laugh. Soon, they will see." Far above, in the top-floor office, the hotel director sat at his desk. He was reading through some documents when the manager knocked and entered. Manager bowed slightly. "Sir, there was a small incident in the lobby." The director looked up sharply. "What kind of incident?" The manager hesitated. "Some guests complained about one of the maids. I asked her to leave the area." The director's brows furrowed. "Which maid?" The manager shifted uncomfortably. The young black maid. The one who usually works near the laundry." The director's eyes narrowed. He stood slowly, his chair creaking behind him. His voice turned cold. "You asked her to leave?" The manager swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," the guests insisted. Were very loud. The director's jaw tightened. He slammed the document on the desk. "Do you have any idea who she is?" The manager blinked in confusion. She's a maid, sir." The director shook his head slowly, his eyes sharp. "No, she is far more than that." The manager's mouth went dry. He wanted to ask questions, but the director's expression silenced him. "Bring her to me," the director said firmly. Now, down in the laundry room, the maid was still folding towels when a shadow fell across the doorway. She looked up to see the manager standing there. His face was pale, his hands fidgeting. "The director wants to see you," he said. Quietly, the other maids gasped. Their eyes darted from the manager to her, filled with curiosity. The director rarely called for any staff member, especially not a maid. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face showed no surprise, almost as if she had been expecting this moment. She nodded once. "Very well." Steps. She followed the manager out of the room. The whispers of the other maids followed behind her like a trail. The guests in the lobby continued laughing, unaware that the tide was about to turn. They believed they had silenced her forever. But in truth, they had only set the stage for her rise. For the girl they mocked is just a maid, was walking toward the moment where her true identity would be revealed. And when that moment came, the same guests who laughed would be the ones who could not breathe. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. The maid stepped inside, followed by the nervous manager. The golden mirror walls of the elevator reflected her small figure, her simple uniform, and the silent fire in her eyes. She stood straight, holding her hands together calmly. The manager avoided looking at her. His throat was dry, kept fidgeting with his tie, his eyes flicking to the floor numbers as the elevator rose higher and higher. Finally, the doors opened again on the top floor. The air here felt different, quieter, heavier. The carpets were thick and dark, the walls decorated with portraits of the hotel's founders. This was not a place for staff. It was the place of power. The maid stepped out without hesitation. Her steps were light but steady. She knew this hallway well, better than anyone suspected. The manager led her to a large oak door at the end. He paused, knocked twice, and waited. A deep voice answered from inside. "Enter." The manager pushed the door open. The maid walked in first. The director's office was vast. A tall window behind the desk revealed the glittering city skyline. The shelves were filled with books, framed certificates, and golden awards. The air smelled faintly of leather and polished wood. Behind the desk stood the director. A tall man in his late 50s, his hair silver at the temples, his suit perfectly tailored. His sharp eyes softened only when they fell on the maid. She bowed her head politely. "Sir." The director's lips curved into a faint smile. "Sit." The manager looked shocked. The director had never invited a maid to sit. But the girl moved calmly, pulling out the chair in front of the desk, sat with quiet grace. The manager remained standing near the door, sweating. The director folded his hands on the desk. "I heard what happened in the lobby." The maid did not flinch. "Yes, sir." His eyes narrowed. Upper wall. What would have been the use? They see only what they want to see. The director studied her for a long moment. The silence stretched between them. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Do you still carry it?" he asked quietly. Her hand moved slowly to her pocket. She pulled out the small leather notebook, placed it gently on the desk, and slid it toward him. The manager's eyes widened, tilted his head slightly, trying to see what it was. But the director placed his hand over the notebook protectively. He looked at the maid again. "You know what this means, don't you?" Her eyes met his, firm and unafraid. "Yes, it means I do not need to answer to anyone in that lobby." The director's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "You are your father's daughter." Your manager's knees nearly gave out. God. His mind was spinning. Father? What father? What did this mean? The maid lowered her gaze briefly, her voice softening. He built this place, with his hands, his sweat, his dreams, and yet, to them, I am invisible. The director's voice grew sharp. "I will not laugh for long. The time has come." The maid lifted her head. Her eyes glowed with determination. "Yes, let them see the truth." The director opened the notebook, flipping through the pages. Inside were contracts, deeds, and signatures documents proving ownership. At the bottom of one page was the unmistakable name of the founder, her father. The manager's mouth fell open. His skin turned pale. His heart raced as the realization struck him like thunder. She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just staff. She was the rightful owner of the hotel. The manager stepped back, his hands trembling, his voice cracked. "Sir, is this?" "True." The director's cold eyes flicked. Toward him. "Yes. More true than your loyalty has ever been." The manager's face burned with shame. He remembered how he had asked her to leave the lobby. He remembered the look in her eyes. Now he realized why that silence had felt so heavy, because she had known. He lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. Back in the lobby, rich guests were still celebrating their victory. They believed the maid was gone for good. One man leaned back in his chair. Finally, peace. This place should stay pure, untouched by low-class workers. The icy necklace woman nodded smugly. True luxury is about perfection. Maid should never disturb it. But as they laughed, a bellboy passed by carrying a tray of glasses. He glanced at them with a hint of disapproval in his eyes. He had heard the whispers from the staff. He knew something the guests did not. Word was spreading quickly through the service corridors. The maid had been called to the director's office. Everyone knew what that meant. The hotel staff whispered in corners, their eyes wide. They exchanged looks filled with both excitement and fear. Something was about to change. Inside the office, the director closed the notebook and pushed it back toward the maid. "Keep it close," he said firmly. "Because tonight you may." "Need it?" The maid slid it back into her pocket. Her fingers brushed over the leather gently. Her heart beat stronger now, not with fear, but with purpose. The director stood. He walked around the desk and stopped in front of her. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he said quietly, "Your father would be proud. This is your time." She nodded. Once, her voice barely above a whisper, "I will not let his name be forgotten." The director looked at the manager, who still stood frozen by the door. "You will take her back to the lobby. You will show respect." The manager swallowed hard, bowing quickly. "Yes, sir." The maid rose from the chair. She smoothed her apron, her face calm once again. But this time, her silence carried a different weight. It was no longer the silence of humiliation. It was the silence of power waiting to be revealed. She followed the manager out of the office. The hallway stretched ahead, silent and golden. Her footsteps were soft, but they echoed with a strength no one could ignore. The elevator doors opened. Again. She stepped inside, the manager following behind. The descent felt longer this time, every second filled with tension. The manager's eyes darted to her, then away again. He wanted to apologize, but no words came. How could he face her after what he had done? Finally, the elevator doors slid open. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses rushed in from the lobby. The maid stepped out first. Her chin was slightly higher now, her pace steady, unhurried. The guests had not yet noticed her return. But soon, very soon, their laughter would die in their throats. At the reception desk, 2 staff members whispered nervously, "She's back," with the manager. "Something is happening. I can feel it." A bellboy's eyes lit up with anticipation. Maybe the truth will finally come out. Staff exchanged glances, their faces filled with secret smiles. For years, they had known pieces of the story. For years, they had wondered when she would reveal herself. Now, it seemed, the moment was near. The maid walked across the marble floor of the lobby. The golden chandeliers sparkled above her. Her footsteps echoed softly, but with each step, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, the laughter weaker. One guest finally noticed her. His smile faded. He nudged the woman beside him. "That the maid? She's back?" The icy necklace woman turned, her eyes narrowing, her lips curled in irritation. "What is she doing here again?" Other guests began to notice too. Their voices dropped. Confusion rippled through the room. The maid walked calmly, her face serene. But inside, her heart whispered, "Soon, soon. They will see who I am." The lobby was alive with sound again, glasses clinking, laughter rolling, the soft piano notes floating in the background. The rich guests leaned back in their velvet chairs, their smug smiles still fresh from their victory. To them, the maid was gone. The embarrassment had been erased. Luxury and order had been restored. But then, the elevator door slid open. Softly, calmly, the maid stepped out. Her simple uniform was still the same, but something in her presence had shifted. Her chin was a little higher, her eyes a little brighter, her silence heavier, deeper. Beside her walked the manager, his face pale, his steps uneasy. He trailed slightly behind her, almost as if ashamed. The guests did not notice at first, but slowly, one by one, their heads turned. Their laughter faltered. Their glasses paused mid-air. The icy necklace woman frowned deeply. Her lips pressed together in annoyance. What is she doing back here? The man was slick gray. Hair narrowed his eyes. I thought we told them to send her away. The guests looked to the manager, expecting him to remove her again. But instead of walking ahead to block her path, he stayed behind her, his head lowered. His silence was strange, almost guilty. Whispers rippled across the lobby, the staff behind. The reception desk exchanged glances. The bellboys froze mid-step, their hands gripping the luggage carts tightly. The waiters moved slower, their trays trembling in their hands. Something was wrong. Something was different. The maid did not rush. Her steps were measured, graceful, almost regal. She crossed the marble floor as if she owned it. And in truth, she did. The icy necklace woman rose from her chair sharply. Her voice cut across the room. Manager, what is the meaning of this? Why is that maid back here? All eyes turned to the manager. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. His mouth opened, but no words came. Could not bring himself to humiliate her again, not after what he had learned. His silence confused the guests. Their annoyance grew. This is ridiculous, another man barked. We pay for privacy, for respect, and she dares to walk here again. The maid stopped in the center of the lobby. The golden chandelier shone directly above her, its light spilling over her simple uniform. She looked around slowly, her gaze brushing over every face. The room went quiet. The piano player's hands faltered again, the melody breaking. The fountain was the only sound left, steady trickle echoing like a heartbeat. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Did not understand why the manager stayed silent. They did not understand why the maid stood so calmly, as if waiting for something. Finally, the icy necklace woman snapped, her voice shrill. Who do you think you are, standing there like that? You are nothing but a servant. Leave this place at once. Right. The words sliced through the air. Gasps followed from some staff who were listening nearby. Their hearts pounded. They knew the truth was close, so close now. The maid's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something firmer. She did not move. She did not speak. Her silence grew louder than the woman's insult. The manager took a step forward, his face drenched in sweat. He raised his hand slightly, his voice trembling. Please, please calm yourselves. You do not understand. The guests cut him off with mocking laughter. Not understand? We understand perfectly well. She is out of place. She ruins the picture of this hotel. The maid's eyes glistened, but not with tears, with strength. She slowly reached into her pocket. Her fingers brushed against the leather cover of the notebook. She felt its weight, its power, but she did not pull it out. Not yet. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked directly at the icy necklace woman. For the first time, her voice rang out across the lobby. It was soft, calm, but filled with something that made everyone fall. Silent. Are you sure, she said slowly, that I do not belong here? The woman blinked, stunned by the tone. The other guests looked at one another in confusion. The maid's eyes did not waver. Her words were simple, but her presence made them heavy. The icy necklace woman scoffed, trying to regain control. Yes, you are staff. You clean floors, you carry towels, you stay out of sight. That is your place. The maid tilted her head, slightly, her lips pressed together in thought. Then she said softly, perhaps. It is time you learned the truth about this place. The guests frowned. Murmurs spread quickly. What is she talking about? Truth. What truth? 8. Staff behind the reception desk stopped breathing. The bellboys gripped their carts tighter, their eyes shining with anticipation. The manager closed his eyes for a moment, bracing himself. He knew what was about to come. The maid stepped forward, her voice steady. "You see a uniform? You see? A servant. But you do not see the story. You do not see the hands that built these walls. The heart that dreamed of this hotel long before you ever stepped inside." Her words carried across the room. The guests shifted uneasily, their smugness faltering. The icy necklace woman laughed nervously. "What nonsense is this? A story? What could you possibly know?" The maid's hand pressed against the notebook in her pocket again. Her voice softened, but the strength in it grew. "I know more than you think, and soon. Everyone here will know too." The lobby was silent. Every pair of eyes was on her. Even the piano player stopped, his hands frozen above the keys. The maid took another step forward, the light of the chandelier following her. The golden glow seemed to crown her head like a secret halo. The guests stared, confused, unsettled. They had demanded she leave. They had mocked her, insulted her, erased her. But now, here she stood, unshaken, unafraid, and for the first time they began to wonder, who is she really? The chandelier light glowed golden above the maid's head, casting her in a strange, almost royal shine. Her simple uniform looked out of place now, too plain for the way she stood, too small for the strength in her voice. The guests stared. Their eyes narrowed, their lips pressed into tight lines. Confusion spread across their faces, but pride kept them from showing fear. The icy necklace woman laughed first. A sharp, cutting laugh that tried to break the silence. "What is this?" she sneered. "Some little speech? Some fairy tale?" The others followed with chuckles, mocking smiles, nods of agreement. "Yes, enough of this nonsense. She is wasting our time. We did not come here to listen to a maid play riddles." But the staff did not laugh. The receptionists stood stiff behind their desk. The bellboys gripped the handles of their carts tighter, their eyes locked on the maid. The waiters moved slower, their trays rattling in their hands. They knew. They'd always known something was different about her, and now they were waiting for the moment the truth finally came out. The manager stood frozen, caught between two worlds. His bosses, the true bosses, were here in the lobby. But they were not the guests. They were not the ones laughing, and he knew it. The maid took a step closer. Her voice did not rise, but it carried. "You think I am wasting your time?" she asked softly. "You think I have no place here? I am only meant to bow to your words, to clean after your mess, to stay silent while you spit insults?" Her eyes glistened with something sharp, not tears, sadness, but fire. The icy necklace woman flinched slightly but quickly recovered. "Yes, that is your job. And if you cannot do it with respect, then you should leave this hotel forever." Maid's lips curved faintly. It was not a smile. It was something deeper, something hidden. She shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "I cannot leave, because this place is mine." The room froze. The laughter died instantly. The guests blinked, their mouths open, their voices caught in their throats. The icy necklace woman tilted her head back and scoffed. "Yours? Yours?" she repeated, her laugh shaky, forced. "What kind of joke is this?" The man with slick, gray hair leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Manager," he barked. "What is she talking about? Why are you letting this woman say such ridiculous things?" The manager's throat tightened. His lips trembled, but he stayed silent. He could not look the guests in the eyes. Instead, his gaze rested on the maid, his shoulders heavy with truth. The maid stepped closer to the center of the lobby. The golden light followed her. Her voice was steady, stronger now. "For years you came here. You walked across this marble floor. You sipped wine in this lounge. You demanded, you insulted, you laughed. And all this time, you thought it belonged to you." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Her words rang too true, too sharp. "But you were wrong," she continued. Her hand touched her pocket, the notebook pressing against her palm. Her fingers curled around it slowly, feeling its weight. "This hotel, this building, these walls," she said, her voice low but powerful. They carry my family's name. They carry my blood, my work, my sacrifice. The icy necklace woman slammed her hand against the table. Enough, she shouted. This is madness. You are nothing but a maid in uniform. You are not one of us. The maid turned her eyes toward her. For the first time, her lips curved into a true smile, calm, unshaken. She stepped closer, her shoes tapping against the marble like steady drumbeats. Not one of you? She asked softly. You're right, I am not one of you. Her eyes hardened. I am above you. Gasps filled the room. The guests froze, their faces red with anger and shock. The icy necklace woman stood, her hands shaking. You dare? She began, but the maid cut her off, her voice sharp and steady. I dare, because this is mine. And soon you will see proof. The manager stepped forward at last, his voice trembling. Please, please, madam, stop. They do not understand yet. Let me explain. But she lifted her hand slightly, stopping him. Her eyes remained on the guests. This is not your moment, she told him gently. It is mine. The staff behind the desk exchanged wide-eyed glances. The bellboys stood taller, hope flickering in their eyes. The waiters leaned closer, their ears hungry for the words. The maid turned back to the guests. Her voice dropped lower, quieter, but the silence in the lobby carried it to every corner. You demanded that I leave this place, but the truth is, it is you who should be careful. Her hand slipped into her pocket, her fingers gripping the notebook tightly now. She could feel the truth ready to burst free. The guests leaned forward, their faces pale now, no longer smug. They wanted to speak, but the words stuck in their throats. Something about her tone, her calmness, her certainty, unnerved them. The icy necklace woman tried to laugh again, but her voice cracked. This is a trick. It must be, she cannot be, but deep down, even she felt the first shiver of doubt. The maid's eyes swept across the room, meeting every gaze. Then, softly, she said the words that made every breath catch. You sit here as guests, but I stand here as the owner. The lobby fell silent. The fountain's soft trickle echoed like thunder. The chandelier lights shimmered brighter, reflecting in the stunned, wide eyes of every person present. And then she pulled the notebook slowly from her pocket. The leather cover gleamed under the golden light. Her fingers rested on it with care, like one holds a crown. The guests gasped. The staff leaned forward. The manager closed his eyes, bracing for the moment everything would change. The maid took a deep breath. Her voice lowered into a whisper that everyone still heard. And now, you will see the truth for yourselves. The lobby was quiet, too quiet. Even the fountain seemed to pause its soft trickle as if holding its breath. The guests stared, mouths slightly open, as the maid held the notebook in her hands. Her fingers rested on the leather cover for a moment. She let the weight of it sink in, and with it, the weight of truth. Slowly, she opened it. Pages filled with neat handwriting, signatures, and official stamps glimmered under the chandelier light. Every sheet seemed to carry authority, proof, and history. The guests leaned forward, squinting at the pages. Some shook their heads. This is impossible, one muttered. Who would allow this? The icy necklace woman took a step back, her hands trembling. No, this can't be, she said, her voice wavering. They lied. This is fake. But the maid's calm eyes met hers. Do you doubt the truth? She asked softly. Do you doubt what your eyes see? The man with slick gray hair grew pale. Manager, he stammered, what is the meaning of this? The manager's head lowered, his face red with shame. He could not meet the guest's eyes. Knew now the full truth, and it burned in his chest. She is right, he whispered quietly, almost to himself. The maid flipped the pages carefully, showing the documents to the guests. Deeds, contracts, ownership, papers, everything that proved she had inherited the hotel from her father. Her name was written clearly on every official document. Gasps erupted across the lobby. Staff members whispered to each other, eyes wide with astonishment. Bellboys and waiters leaned in closer, their hands trembling. The guests' laughter from before had vanished. Now there was confusion, panic, disbelief. Impossible. One of the men said again. She cannot own this place. The maid closed the notebook gently, her calmness contrasting the chaos around her. "You see it yourselves?" she said, her voice soft but firm. "This hotel, these walls, this floor, the chandeliers you admire, they are mine." The icy necklace woman clutched her necklace tightly, her face pale. You lied to us," she whispered, barely audible. "You were just a maid." "I was a maid for you," the girl said quietly, her gaze sharp. "I served you, listened to your insults, tolerated your arrogance, but I never forgot who I am. And now, the time has come for justice." The guests shifted in their seats, unsure what to do. They were rich, powerful people, used to having control everywhere they went. But here, their power was nothing. The manager stepped forward, voice trembling. You must understand, she is the owner." The guests froze, their eyes darting between him and the maid. "How?" muttered one. "This must be a trick." The maid's gaze swept across the lobby again. "I am not a trick," she said. "I am your reality. The truth you refuse to see. I am the daughter of the man who built this hotel, the woman who inherited his name, and the rightful owner of every inch of this building." Staff members gasped quietly, exchanging amazed glances. Some wiped their eyes. Some whispered she always knew, always carried the strength quietly. The guests' faces turned pale with shock and fear. The icy necklace woman's hands trembled, and she took a step back. You cannot," she began. The maid raised a hand, calm and commanding. "You will speak only when spoken to," she said firmly. "The place you mocked, the staff you insulted, the dignity you tried to erase. It all belongs to me now." The guests could feel the weight in her words. It was not arrogance, it was certainty. The authority she carried was real, undeniable. The manager bowed his head slightly, unable to speak further. He had learned his lesson the hard way. The bellboys and staff began to relax, their shoulders lifting for the first time in years. They knew the power of her silence, the power of her patience. Now, the fear in the rich guest's eyes mirrored the pride in hers. One of the guests finally tried to stand, shaking his hands raised. This cannot happen," he stammered. "This hotel, it is ours." The maid shook her head gently. "You may have paid to enjoy luxury, but you never owned it." "I did. Now I will make sure everyone remembers it." The icy necklace woman's face went white. Her voice cracked. As she whispered, Who are you?" "I am the owner," the maid said simply. "And the time for insults is over." She turned her gaze to the manager. "Please, let them understand their place," she said quietly. The manager swallowed, then spoke clearly. "Guests, you must respect the rules. The hotel belongs to her. Everything here, it is hers." The room fell silent again. Even the fountain's trickle seemed to pause in acknowledgement. The maid held the notebook close, her eyes scanning the shocked faces. Each guest stared back, unable to speak. The staff whispered among themselves, awed by her calm strength. Finally, she opened her mouth, her voice soft but piercing. "You may have thought yourselves powerful," she said. "You may have laughed at me. But now, the reality is clear. Respect is not earned with money. It is earned with integrity, patience, and courage. I have all three." Tears glistened in some of the staff members' eyes. They had seen her endure countless insults silently. They had admired her strength quietly. And now, justice had arrived. The guests could only stare, frozen in disbelief. They realized too late that the maid they had mocked was the person who truly held all the power in this building. Her gaze swept the lobby one final time. The golden light shimmered across her face. Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost two. Herself, yet audible to everyone. "Let this be the moment you remember. The moment you learn that no one can take what is rightfully mine." The staff watched silently, the bellboys and waiters holding their breath. The guests' arrogance had been stripped, replaced with the sharp taste of fear and awe. For the first time, the lobby felt silent. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of respect. The kind that comes from realizing the truth is too powerful to ignore. And at that moment, the maid, once silent, once mocked, stood at the center of it all, carrying her father's legacy and the power she had always deserved. The lobby was still, almost frozen in disbelief. The guests had stopped laughing, stopped mocking, stopped pretending they had control. Now all eyes were on the maid, standing tall in her simple uniform, her notebook clutched firmly in her hands. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The maid looked around slowly, taking in every detail. The chandeliers glimmered above her head. The polished marble floor reflected the golden light, the velvet chairs, the crystal glasses. The rich carpets, all of it, belonged to her. She lowered the notebook slightly and spoke, her voice calm, but sharp. From this moment on, I will run this hotel as it should be run. Respect will not be demanded from staff, it will be given freely. Respect will be expected from guests, or they will leave. A murmur ran through the lobby. Some of the guests laughed nervously. This is absurd, one barked. She's a maid. How can she? The maid did not flinch. She opened the notebook and laid it on the reception desk. The contracts, the deeds, everything you see here is mine. If you do not follow the rules, I can and will ask you to leave. This is no longer a place for arrogance or insult. It is a place for dignity. The icy necklace woman's hands trembled. You cannot do this. We pay for service. We are your guests. The maid's eyes met hers with quiet fire. You were my guests, she said calmly, but now you are my responsibility. I will decide how to treat you and how this hotel runs. Your money does not give you power here. The manager stepped forward nervously. Please, give them a chance to understand, he said quietly. You will see that she is. Right. The maid's gaze shifted to the staff behind the desk. They have always known the truth, she said softly. They have always seen my strength, my patience, my dedication. The staff's eyes shone with admiration. What? The bellboys straightened their backs, the waiters held their trays tighter, and the receptionist smiled quietly. They had always respected her, even when the guests had not. Now they could show it openly. The maid raised her voice slightly, commanding attention. Without anger. I am in charge here. Guests who disrespect staff or insult others will be asked to leave immediately. Staff who work with integrity and dedication will be honored and protected. The guests stared at her, disbelief etched across their faces. One man, red-faced, tried to interrupt. This is ridiculous. We have always, the maid held up her hand. Her calm authority silenced him instantly. You may have been powerful outside these walls, she said quietly. But here, inside this hotel, respect is earned differently, and you have lost it by your actions. The icy necklace woman's lips quivered. She looked around. Noticing the staff now standing a little taller, eyes shining with loyalty, a cold fear crept into her chest. She realized her money could not command obedience here. The maid turned back to the manager. Show them the proper way, she instructed softly. Let them understand what it means to be in my hotel. The manager nodded quickly. He took a deep breath and walked toward the guests. You will apologize, he said firmly to the staff. And you will follow the hotel's rules from now on? This is no longer negotiable. A heavy silence fell over the room. The guests exchanged panicked glances. They had never been told what to do in such a way. They had never felt powerless before. The maid moved gracefully across the lobby, every step deliberate, her presence commanding. She stopped near the icy necklace woman. Her eyes met the woman's, calm yet firm. You will show respect. She said softly, you will not humiliate others. This is your first lesson in the rules of my hotel. The woman's hands trembled, her mouth opened, then closed. She could only nod slowly, fear replacing arrogance. The other guests shuffled in their chairs, muttering nervously. They realized the power dynamics had shifted completely. Money alone could not save them now. The maid then turned to the staff, her voice warm but strong. You have always worked hard, and you have always shown dedication. Now, your loyalty and courage will be recognized. This hotel is yours too, as much as it is mine. Gasps of happiness ran through the staff. They whispered to one another, tears glistening in some eyes. The bellboys, the waiters, the receptionists, they finally felt seen. The maid, once silent and mocked, had now restored dignity not only to herself but to everyone around her. The manager stepped back, smiling faintly. He knew the hotel was finally in the right hands. The guests, however, could only sit in stunned silence. Realizing the truth they had never wanted to see, the maid they had humiliated was no longer powerless. And, with a calm glance, the maid surveyed the lobby. She could see fear, respect, and a little awe in every face. Her authority was clear, her legacy protected. In the city outside, the world beyond these walls would soon know too. The icy necklace woman swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. I understand. The maid nodded once. That is all I ask. The staff exhaled in relief. The tension in the room slowly faded, replaced with the quiet hum of acknowledgement. The maid had reclaimed her place, and now the hotel would run under her guidance, her integrity, and her power. The guests, humbled and shaken, finally realized they had underestimated her. They had mocked her. But now they would never forget. Her strength, the notebook rested safely in her hands, a symbol of her father's legacy and her own unwavering courage. The maid, once overlooked, had taken control, and she would ensure that respect, dignity, and justice reigned in her hotel from this day forward. The lobby was quiet but alive with a new energy. The staff moved with confidence now, their heads held high. They whispered to one another, smiles bright, eyes shining with respect and admiration for the maid, who had once been mocked but now ruled the space with authority. The maid stood at the center, the notebook resting in her hands, her gaze swept. Across the lobby, every glance carried quiet command, calm but firm. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They had learned the truth. This hotel belonged to her. They could no longer speak or act with the arrogance they once displayed. The icy necklace woman tried to stand, but her legs shook beneath her. She had been accustomed to commanding attention everywhere she went, but now her presence was insignificant. She could only look up at the maid, trying to hide her fear behind a trembling mask. The maid's voice was soft but carried across the room. "You have been here before," she said, "and you have demanded, insulted, and laughed. Now you will learn what respect means in this hotel." The manager stepped forward. He motioned for the guests to rise. "You will apologize to the staff," he said firmly. "You will follow all rules. From this moment, no one may humiliate anyone else inside this hotel." The guests hesitated. They had power outside. They had money. But here, they were powerless. The maid approached slowly, each step deliberate. She stopped in front of the icy necklace woman. Her eyes were calm, but the words that followed struck like a hammer. "Apologize," she said simply. "Apologize for mocking those who serve you. Apologize for underestimating what is rightfully mine, and apologize for forgetting what dignity means." The woman swallowed hard, her hands shaking. I am sorry," she whispered. The words came reluctantly, but they were spoken. The maid's gaze moved to the other guests. They looked at one another, uncertain. Finally, the man with slick gray hair muttered, "Yes." "I apologize too." The staff exhaled quietly, relief washing over their faces. They'd never expected the guests to admit their wrongs. But the maid had made it clear justice would be served. The maid turned to the staff. "You have been patient for years," she said softly. "You have worked tirelessly, often without recognition. Now it is time for that to change." The bellboys straightened their backs. The waiters lifted their heads. The receptionists held their hands together, quietly anticipating her next words. "From this day forward," she continued, "you will be treated with respect. Your work will be acknowledged. Your loyalty will be rewarded." The staff whispered among themselves. Some wiped tears from their eyes. They could finally see the fairness they had always hoped for. The maid then faced the guests again. "You will follow the rules," she said firmly. "This hotel operates with dignity and respect. Anyone who refuses to comply will be asked to leave. The guests' faces turned pale. Their previous arrogance had vanished completely. They realized their wealth meant nothing here. Their status could not protect them. The manager walked over and opened a large ledger, began noting the guests' names, the rules, and the consequences for breaking them. The guests watched nervously, realizing the full scope of the maid's control. The maid turned back to the staff. "Prepare the rooms," she said softly. "Sure, everything is perfect, as it should be. Treat every guest regardless of status. Fairness. And remember, you have my full support." The staff moved with renewed purpose. Their steps were confident. Their eyes glowed with the knowledge that they had an ally, a leader who valued them. The maid then returned her gaze to the guests. "You have been humbled," she said quietly. "Let this lesson remain with you. Respect is not earned through wealth or arrogance. It is earned through integrity and understanding." The guests remained seated, silent. They had no words to argue. They could only nod, their previous pride replaced with fear and respect. The maid turned back to the center of the lobby. She opened the notebook once more. Her fingers brushed the pages lightly, feeling the weight of responsibility. This hotel was no longer just a building. It was a symbol of dignity, patience, and justice. The staff watched her in awe. The bellboys whispered to one another, "She is not just a maid, she is a leader." The waiters nodded quietly, understanding finally why she had always carried herself with quiet strength. The icy necklace woman finally muttered, barely audible, She really owns this place." The maid's gaze met hers, calm and steady. "Yes," she said softly. "And now you will all see the consequences of your actions." The staff moved quickly, attending to every detail. The guests realized, with growing panic, that nothing would be the same. The maid would run the hotel her way fairly, firmly, and with undeniable authority. The bellboys moved the luggage with precision. The waiters served with confidence, and the receptionists handled check-ins efficiently. Every action reflected the maid's new order. The guests could only watch, powerless. They realized they had underestimated her completely. They had mocked her, insulted her, and now they were learning that true power is not in wealth, but in courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination. The maid stepped back, closing the notebook gently. Her eyes scanned the lobby one last time. She saw fear, yes, but she also saw respect. And in the staff, she saw hope. She smiled faintly, a calm, satisfied smile. The guests would remember this day forever. They had mocked a maid, but now they had been shown the truth. The manager approached her quietly. "She will not forget this," he whispered. The maid nodded. "They will remember," she said softly, "and they will learn to respect everyone. In this hotel from now on?" The golden chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting the light across the marble floor. The lobby felt alive again, but this time it carried a new energy, one of order, dignity, and rightful authority. The maid had transformed the hotel, and nothing would ever be the same. The lobby buzzed with a quiet energy now. The staff moved with confidence, smiles lighting up their faces. The guests sat stiffly in their chairs, unsure where to look, unsure how to behave. The arrogance they had brought with them had vanished completely. The maid stood tall, the notebook resting in her hands. Her calm eyes swept across the room, and she let herself smile slightly, not at the guests, but at the staff. They had waited patiently for justice, and now it was here. "From today forward," she said clearly, "every member of the staff who shows dedication, respect, and courage will be rewarded." Gasps of joy ran through the staff. The bellboys whispered to one another, eyes wide. The waiters held their trays a little higher, heads lifted proudly. The receptionists exchanged excited glances, their hearts light with anticipation. The maid gestured toward one of the bellboys who had worked tirelessly, often silently through countless insults. "You," she said softly, "have always carried yourself with pride and patience. From today, you will be promoted. Your loyalty and dedication will be recognized." The bellboy blinked, stunned, tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He could only nod, tears glimmering in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered finally, his voice shaking. The maid's gaze moved to a young waiter who had been overlooked repeatedly despite his hard work. "You have served with integrity even when others failed. From this day on, you will have more responsibility and more respect for your efforts." The waiter's eyes widened, and a quiet smile spread across his face. He had never expected recognition, yet here it was, delivered calmly, fairly, and with dignity. The staff watched in awe as she continued, acknowledging each person's effort. Reward after reward, filling the room with pride and hope. The hotel had become more than a workplace, it was a place of justice, loyalty, and acknowledgement. But the guests, they sat stiffly, their faces pale, their hands shaking. Slightly, the icy necklace woman clutched her necklace nervously. She had been taught a lesson, but the fear remained fresh. The maid turned to them, her voice calm but firm. "You have been humbled. You have been shown the truth. This hotel does not belong to you. It may have wealth, but here respect and dignity govern the rules." One of the men tried to interrupt, but she raised a hand gently. "Silence," she said softly. "Your lesson has only begun." The guests could feel the weight in her words. They realized fully now that their previous actions, mockery, insults, arrogance, had consequences. This was not a place where they could act as they pleased. The maid's eyes scanned the room slowly. "From today, you will follow the rules. You will treat staff with respect. You will apologize where you have wronged. And you will understand that power is not in wealth alone." The icy necklace woman's lips trembled as she finally whispered, "I understand. I will respect the staff." The maid nodded once. "That is all I ask. Do not forget it," staff whispered quietly among themselves, feeling a sense of justice finally served. They had always known the maid's strength, but now the guests had seen it too. The room had shifted from arrogance and fear to fairness and respect, all guided by the maid's calm authority. The manager stepped forward, opening the ledger once more. He began noting promotions, rewards, and new responsibilities. The guests could only watch in silence, powerless and humbled. The maid turned to the staff again. "Every action you take now represents the values of this hotel," she said. "Loyalty, integrity, and respect must guide you at all times. Those who serve with heart will be rewarded. Those who disrespect others will face consequences." The bellboys, waiters, and receptionists nodded, inspired by her leadership. For the first time, they felt pride in their work, not just because of recognition, but because of the justice that had been delivered. The guests, meanwhile, sat quietly, realizing they could no longer challenge her authority. They had been mocked, yes, but now they had learned that true power came from patience, courage, and rightful ownership. The maid opened her notebook one final time, glancing over the pages that held proof of her authority. "This building, this hotel is more than walls and marble," she said softly. "It is a place where justice, dignity, and integrity must thrive. Those who forget this will be reminded gently or firmly." The staff smiled quietly, feeling hope, pride, and loyalty. The guests shifted nervously, their faces pale, their arrogance completely gone. The icy necklace woman's voice was barely audible. I will not forget this." The maid's eyes met hers, calm and steady. "Good," she said softly. "Remember it always." With that, she turned back to the staff. "You are ready," she said warmly. "Lead with integrity, and this hotel will shine brighter than ever." The staff moved with confidence, ready to serve with respect and dignity. The guests could only watch, realizing that the maid they had once mocked had now become the ruler, the authority and the guiding force of the hotel. The lobby, once a place of arrogance and insult, had transformed into a space of justice, fairness, and order. The maid had ensured that respect, courage, and integrity were not just words, but living principles. And as the chandeliers glimmered overhead, the staff and the guests alike understood a simple truth. True power does not lie in wealth or arrogance. lies in patience, courage, and the quiet strength to demand justice when it is rightfully yours. The lobby was no longer the same. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting golden light across polished marble floors. The staff moved with confidence, smiles bright, heads held high. The guests sat stiffly in their chairs, their faces pale. The previous arrogance replaced by unease. The maid stood in the center, notebook in hand. Her calm gaze swept across the room, settling briefly on each guest. "You have seen the truth," she said softly. "You have been humbled. Now it is time to follow the rules of this hotel." The icy necklace woman swallowed hard. She tried to compose herself, straightening her posture. "We understand," she said quietly, though her voice trembled. The other guests nodded reluctantly. They had learned painfully that their wealth did not grant them power here. This hotel ran by rules of respect, dignity, and integrity principles. They had mocked too often. The manager stepped forward, holding the ledger. "From now on," he said firmly, "all guests must adhere to the hotel's code of conduct. Disrespect will not be tolerated. Complaints must be fair. And staff will be treated with the dignity they deserve." The guests nodded, faces pale. Some whispered to one another, realizing they could no longer act with arrogance. The icy necklace woman muttered under her breath, "I never imagined a maid could run a place like this." The maid's gaze remained calm, sharp, and steady. "Your lesson is not complete," she said softly. "You may follow the rules now, but you must understand the consequences of your actions. Respect is earned, and those who fail to earn it will leave." The staff glanced at her, admiration. In their eyes, the bellboys whispered quietly, "She carries herself with power and fairness." The waiters nodded silently, understanding now why she had always been different. But the guests, uneasy, shifted in their seats. They realized that the rules were not suggestions, they were commands. Backed by authority, suddenly a soft chime echoed from the front desk. A new arrival had come. The maid's gaze flicked toward the door. A man entered, a wealthy-looking guest, carrying himself with confidence, clearly unaware of the recent events. The staff held their breath, the guests watched nervously, and the manager's hands trembled slightly. The maid stepped forward calmly, notebook in hand. She approached the new guest, her eyes steady. "Welcome to our hotel," she said softly. "Please remember, respect is required. Arrogance and insult are not tolerated here." The man laughed lightly, unaware of the tension in the room. "I have stayed in many hotels," he said, "and no one has ever." The maid raised her hand slightly, stopping him mid-sentence. Her voice dropped, calm but sharp. "This hotel is different. You will follow the rules. Disrespect is not permitted. Staff must be treated with dignity." The man's laughter died instantly. He blinked, confused and slightly fearful. He had expected a simple check-in, not a warning. And he realized quickly that this hotel was not like the others. The guests in the lobby exchanged glances. The icy necklace woman whispered, She is firm with everyone, not just us." The maid returned her attention to the first group of guests. "You have witnessed the consequences of arrogance," she said softly. "You have been shown the truth. Now you must act accordingly." The guests nodded, swallowing hard. They realized they could not challenge her authority. The rules were clear, and she enforced them calmly but firmly. The staff moved efficiently, attending to the new guest with professionalism and dignity. The bellboys lifted luggage carefully. The waiters served water without hesitation. The receptionists handled check-ins smoothly. Demonstrating the high standards the maid had set, the guests, humbled, could only watch. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with fear and awe. They understood now. This hotel was run by someone they could not intimidate, mock, or manipulate. The icy necklace woman whispered to the others, She is not just a maid, she is in control of everything." The maid returned her gaze to the lobby, scanning every face calmly. "From today," she said, "this hotel will run with fairness, dignity, and respect. Everyone here, staff and guests alike, will understand their place, and anyone who forgets will face consequences." A hush fell over the lobby. Even the fountain's soft trickle seemed to pause in acknowledgement. The new guest, still pale, nodded quickly. He had expected luxury and indulgence. Instead, he found rules, respect, and authority. And he understood at last that this hotel was not a place for arrogance. The staff whispered quietly, inspired by the maid's calm strength. The bellboys, waiters, and receptionists finally felt seen and valued. The guests, humbled, could only comply. The maid opened her notebook once more, glancing over the pages. "This hotel," she said softly, "is more than walls and marble. It is a place of justice, respect, and integrity. Those who forget this will be reminded. Those who respect it will find loyalty, fairness, and honor." The guests exchanged nervous glances. They realized fully now that they had underestimated her. The icy necklace woman muttered quietly, She has changed. Everything." The maid nodded once, calmly. "Yes," she said softly. "And it will remain this way from this day forward." The lobby shimmered under the chandelier's golden light. The staff moved with pride. The guests, humbled, learned a lesson they would never forget. The maid, once mocked, now respected, stood at the center of it all, calm, steady, and in full control. The lobby was calm, yet the air was thick with tension. The staff moved confidently, smiles bright, heads held high, proud of the order and dignity the maid had restored. The guests, pale and humbled, remained seated. Still uneasy from the lessons of the past days, the maid, notebook in hand, walked slowly across the lobby. Her gaze swept over the staff first, giving them reassurance. Then her eyes settled on the guests, quiet but piercing. "You have learned the rules," she said softly. "You have seen the consequences of arrogance. Now it is time to follow." Then, without question, the icy necklace woman swallowed hard. "Yes, we understand," she whispered, her hands trembling. Just as the tension seemed to ease, the lobby doors burst open. A group of men and women, dressed in expensive suits, entered abruptly. They looked around, their eyes sharp, scanning the room. One man's voice rang out, loud and commanding. "This is the hotel we booked. Open the doors for us immediately." The staff froze, unsure what to do. The guests stiffened, recognizing the familiar arrogance in these new arrivals. The manager's hands trembled. He glanced at the maid, waiting for direction. The maid took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her eyes met the newcomers, calm yet sharp. "This hotel is under my management," she said firmly. "We'll follow the rules or you will not be served. Respect is required." The group laughed lightly, a cold, arrogant sound. "We don't take orders from anyone," one of them said. "We booked a luxury stay. We demand access immediately." The maid's gaze remained steady. "You will wait," she said softly, holding her notebook close, "until you understand the rules of this hotel." A man stepped forward aggressively, his hand raised as if to grab the reception desk. The maid's voice cut through the air, like a sharp blade. "Do not touch anything," she said firmly. "You are guests here only if you follow the rules." The group exchanged confused glances, laughing nervously. They had expected to intimidate the staff and take what they wanted. Instead, they found a calm authority that refused to be shaken. The staff watched silently, awe shining in their eyes. They had seen the maid handle wealthy, arrogant guests before, but this was different. This group seemed determined to test her limits. The maid stepped closer, her voice soft but filled with command. "You may have power outside," she said. "You may have money, but here you will learn respect. Follow the rules or leave." The leader of the group laughed harshly. "You're just a maid," he sneered. "How can you control this hotel?" Maid's eyes narrowed, but her calm demeanor never wavered. "I am the owner," she said simply. "My authority is proven. I have the legal documents, the loyalty of my staff, and the strength to enforce the rules." The group hesitated, sensing the seriousness in her words. But one woman, bold and arrogant, stepped forward. "We don't care about rules. Demand service now," she said sharply. The maid remained calm, her voice dropped slightly, carrying Wait and finality, you will wait. You'll respect the staff. You'll follow the rules. If you do not, you will leave this hotel immediately. A tense silence fell over the lobby. The guests who had previously been arrogant watched nervously. Even the bellboys and waiters held their breath, unsure how the confrontation would unfold. The manager whispered quietly, "They are not going to listen." "Are they?" The maid shook her head calmly. "They will," she said softly. "Everyone here learns eventually." Suddenly, one of the men reached for a chair aggressively, intending to sit without permission. The maid's voice rang clear and commanding, "Stop." The man froze, eyes wide. He realized that she was not threatening. She was in full control. Her calm authority carried weight heavier than any force he could muster. The icy necklace woman whispered to the other guests, She doesn't even raise her voice. And yet, everyone listens." The maid's gaze swept across the group. "Of intruders, you may be wealthy, you may be powerful. But inside this hotel, respect governs everything. Step forward with arrogance, and you will be asked to leave." A hush fell over the room. Even the arrogant newcomers could feel the weight of her words. The staff straightened, their eyes glowing with pride and loyalty. The bellboys, waiters, and receptionists were ready to support her if needed. The group's leader swallowed hard. He could see now that this owner was not someone to challenge lightly. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by a careful calculation. The maid continued, her voice calm but unwavering. "You are welcome to stay, but only if you respect the rules. Any violation of dignity, any insult, will result in immediate removal from this hotel. Do you understand?" The group nodded hesitantly, realizing they could not push further without consequences. The maid glanced back at the original guests. "You have witnessed the consequences of arrogance," she said softly. "Now watch as newcomers learn the same lesson." The staff exhaled quietly, relief washing over them. They had been tested indirectly by this group, but their leader, the maid, remained firm, calm, and in full control. The icy necklace woman whispered again, awe in her voice. She really is in charge. No one can challenge her." The maid smiled faintly, calm yet satisfied. Her notebook rested in her hands, a symbol of authority, justice, and patience. The lobby had been tested, and the lesson was clear. Arrogance would not be tolerated. Even the new intruders had learned in moments what the previous guests had learned over days: true power lies not in wealth, but in calm authority, respect, and unwavering courage. The maid turned to the staff quietly. "Prepare the rooms. Tend to the guests with dignity, as always. And remember, we are the ones who uphold the rules." The staff nodded, inspired by her calm strength. The bellboys, waiters, and receptionists moved with renewed purpose, ready to serve, but ready to enforce respect. The guests, both old and new, watched silently, their faces pale with realization. They understood now this hotel would run by rules, fairness, and dignity. And the one they had once mocked was in complete control. The chandeliers shimmered overhead, golden light reflecting on polished floors. The lobby felt alive, not with arrogance, but with respect, pride, and authority. The maid stood at the center, calm, steady, and fully in command, proving once again that true power was earned and not bought. The lobby hummed quietly with anticipation. The staff moved confidently, smiles bright, heads held high, inspired by the maid's authority. The guests, both original and new, sat stiffly in their chairs, uneasy but obedient, still processing the lessons they had learned over the past. Dazed, the maid stood tall at the center, notebook in hand. Her calm eyes swept across the room. She had seen arrogance, disrespect, and mockery, but she had also seen courage, patience, and loyalty. Now, it was time to ensure that everyone understood the true meaning of respect and integrity. "Today," she began, her voice calm but commanding, "we will have a lesson. Not for punishment, but for understanding. This hotel is more than marble, chandeliers, or money. It is a place where dignity, fairness, and integrity are lived every day. The staff listened quietly, awe shining in their eyes. They had followed her instructions faithfully, but now they would understand the philosophy behind her leadership. The icy necklace woman whispered nervously to the others, She wants to teach us something. I think we finally need it. The maid turned her gaze to the guests. You have been humbled, she said softly. You have seen the consequences of arrogance. But understanding comes from reflection, not fear. You will see that respect is not given because of wealth, but because of integrity, courage, and honesty. The guests shifted in their seats, listening carefully. They had experienced her authority firsthand, but this was different. She was offering them a chance to learn, not just to obey. The maid walked slowly across the lobby, glancing at each staff member. You, she said, pointing to a bellboy, have always carried yourself with patience and pride. Your loyalty and hard work are the backbone of this hotel. Your integrity is seen and valued. The bellboy's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and pride filling his face. He had never expected such recognition, yet here it was, calm and sincere. The maid moved to a young waitress. You serve with dedication and care, even when others ignore the rules. Your actions teach others how to act with respect. That is the true value of service. The waitress nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. She had always worked hard, often unnoticed, but now she understood her worth. The maid turned to the guests, her eyes calm but firm. And you, she said softly, have learned the consequences of disrespect. Now you must understand how to act differently. True, power lies in humility, kindness, and fairness. Those who fail to respect others will always be reminded. The icy necklace woman swallowed hard. Yes, we understand, she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly, but the words were sincere. The maid continued, her voice carrying calm authority. This hotel is a reflection of its people. Staff and guests alike must uphold dignity and integrity. When you respect others, you create a space of trust, pride, and honor. When you fail, consequences follow swiftly, fairly, and firmly. The manager nodded quietly. He had seen the staff grow stronger under her guidance. He had seen the guests humbled and transformed. And he knew that this lesson would solidify the culture of the hotel for years to come. The maid raised her notebook. Slightly. This notebook is a symbol, she said softly. Contains proof of ownership, yes? But more importantly, it represents the values I uphold. Respect, patience, courage, and fairness. These values guide every decision, every action, and every rule in this hotel. The staff whispered quietly, admiration filling their voices. The bellboys, waiters, and receptionists finally felt seen, valued, and inspired. The guests, humbled, could only listen. They realized they had underestimated her, not just as a maid, but as a leader, a teacher, and a protector of dignity. The maid's gaze returned to the icy necklace woman. You will leave this hotel with more than memories of luxury. You will leave with an understanding of respect and humility.
Oh.
Do not forget what you have learned. The woman nodded quietly, tears forming in her eyes. She could feel the weight of the lesson, the truth of the maid's words settling deep within her. The maid turned back to the staff. Now, she said softly, we continue our work with integrity. Every guest who enters, every task completed, reflects the values we uphold. Do not falter, do not forget. Staff nodded, their hearts full of pride and determination. They had followed her faithfully, but now they understood why. The hotel was more than a building, it was a place of justice, respect, and dignity. The guests watched silently, humbled, changed by the lessons they had received. Even the new group of intruders had learned quickly that wealth and arrogance meant nothing without respect and integrity. The maid exhaled quietly, satisfied. The lobby, once a place of fear and insult, had transformed into a space of learning, dignity, and pride. Every person in the room, staff and guests alike, had seen the power of patience, courage, and fairness. She closed her notebook gently, her calm authority filling the room. The chandeliers shimmered overhead, casting golden Light across the polished floors, the staff moved with renewed purpose, inspired by the lessons they had learned. The guests remained silent, humbled, reflecting on the truths they could not ignore. The maid's final words hung in the air. Soft, yet powerful. Respect is earned, humility is practiced, and integrity is lived. Remember this, and you will always be welcome here. Staff whispered quietly to one another, pride and admiration shining in their eyes. The guests, pale but thoughtful, nodded silently. Understanding the depth of the lesson, the lobby, once a stage for arrogance and mockery, now stood as a testament to fairness, justice, and dignity. And at the center of it all, the maid calm, steady and unwavering, held the power to transform not just a hotel, but every person who entered it. The lobby, now bathed in golden light from the chandeliers, felt alive yet calm. The staff moved with pride and confidence, reflecting the values their leader had instilled in them. The guests, humbled and thoughtful, obeyed the rules quietly. Having learned their lessons well, the maid stood at the center, notebook in hand, overseeing the smooth operations of the hotel. She had restored dignity, enforced rules, and transformed the space into a place of respect. Yet deep inside, she felt a quiet unease, a challenge approaching that she had not expected. The front doors opened, and a familiar figure entered, moving with careful purpose. It was her former mentor, the person who had trained her in the ways of discipline and management years ago. His face was stern, his eyes sharp, but there was also a flicker of pride in them. The staff and guests froze, sensing the weight of his presence. Even the manager's hands trembled slightly, unsure of what was to come. The maid straightened, meeting his gaze calmly. "Welcome," she said softly. "Your presence honors this hotel, but I must ask what brings you here, your mentors?" Voice was firm, carrying authority and expectation. "I have heard stories," he said, "stories of a maid who has transformed a hotel. I came to see if the tales were true, to test if you are ready to lead with both strength and compassion." The maid nodded, understanding immediately. This was not a challenge of arrogance or wealth like the guests had posed. This was a test of her leadership, her integrity, and her ability to remain fair under pressure. The mentor walked slowly into the lobby, observing every detail. "The staff seems loyal," he said quietly. "The guests are respectful, but can you maintain this order when a true challenge arises? When someone tests you personally, not just professionally?" The maid's calm gaze never wavered. "I'm ready," she said softly. "My staff and I uphold the values of respect, dignity, and integrity. No challenge will break this hotel's order." Her mentor nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the staff. "They respect you," he said quietly. "Not out of fear, but out of loyalty. That is rare. But loyalty is tested in unexpected ways." At that moment, a sudden commotion erupted near the lobby doors. A wealthy guest, previously humbled, rushed in with another group, clearly upset. "This hotel does not deserve our business," he shouted. "I demand to see the manager." "The owner." The staff froze, but the maid stepped forward, notebook in hand, her calm authority immediately taking control of the situation. "You have been here before," she said softly but firmly. "You were humbled, and you promised respect. Your actions now show otherwise. Follow the rules or leave immediately." The guest's face turned pale, his arrogance faltering under her unwavering gaze. I don't. I demand his temender." Taped closer to the maid. Quietly observing, he whispered, "This is the real test, not the guest's submission, but your ability to enforce justice calmly, without anger or fear." The maid inhaled slowly, her voice steady. "This hotel operates on fairness," she said firmly. "I do not act from anger or pride. I act from responsibility. Your arrogance has no place here." The staff watched in awe, their admiration growing. Even the previously rebellious guests realized the depth of her calm authority. The guest looked around nervously, realizing that this time he could not intimidate her. The staff's loyalty, her calm strength, and the presence of her mentor made it clear she held the true power. Finally, the The guest muttered a trembling apology, realizing the weight of his behavior. The maid nodded once, her gaze softening slightly. "Apologize sincerely and follow the rules," she said. "That is the only path forward." The guest swallowed hard, humility replacing arrogance. "Yes, I understand. I am sorry," he said quietly. The mentor nodded approvingly, his stern face breaking into a faint smile. "You have done well," he whispered quietly to her. "Handled this with calm authority, fairness, and integrity. That is the mark of a true leader." The maid exhaled quietly, relief washing over her. Her strength had been tested not by wealth, arrogance, or power, but by loyalty, respect, and personal challenge. She had succeeded, proving that her authority was not just a matter of law, but of character. The staff moved efficiently, attending to every guest with pride and dignity. The guests watched silently, humbled and inspired by the maid's calm. "Control?" The mentor turned to the guests, his voice carrying authority. "Respect is earned, loyalty is tested, and integrity is revealed in moments like these. This hotel's owner demonstrates all three. The lobby, once a stage for arrogance and disrespect, now stood as a testament to fairness, courage, and calm authority. The staff felt pride, the guests felt humility, and the maid felt the quiet satisfaction of having upheld her values under pressure. She glanced at her mentor, who nodded once, silently acknowledging her strength. The chandelier light shimmered, overhead, reflecting the calm, powerful order she had established. The maid closed her notebook gently, feeling the weight of responsibility and the satisfaction of having passed this personal challenge. She turned to the staff, her voice soft but strong. "Remember, we uphold respect, dignity, and integrity every day. Even when tested personally, we act with calm, fairness, and courage. That is how this hotel remains a place of honor." Staff nodded, inspired and proud. The guests, humbled and thoughtful, understood the lesson fully, and the mentor, standing silently, saw that the maid had truly become the leader. He had trained her to be strong, fair, and unwavering. The lobby glimmered with golden light, live with pride, respect, and dignity. The maid stood at the center, calm, steady, and fully in control, having proven her strength not just to others, but to herself. The lobby had never felt calmer. The chandeliers glimmered, casting soft golden light across polished floors. The staff moved confidently there, heads held high, smiles bright with pride. The guests, humbled and thoughtful, remained seated. Fully aware of the lessons they had learned, the maid stood at the center, notebook in hand, surveying the room with calm authority. Her mentor had just left, leaving her alone with the staff and guests, yet her confidence remained unwavering. Everything seemed perfect until a loud crash shattered the quiet. The front doors burst open, and a powerful gust of wind swept through the lobby. A delivery truck had accidentally struck the hotel's entrance, leaving debris scattered across the floor. Glass shattered, papers flew into the air, and a cloud of dust filled the once pristine lobby. The staff froze for a moment, shocked by the sudden chaos. The guests gasped, some stumbling backward in fear. The manager's hands trembled as he tried to call the authorities. The maid, however, stepped forward calmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Everyone stay calm," she commanded firmly. "Step back from the debris. No one is to be harmed." Frada Semenes. The staff snapped to attention, inspired by her calm authority. Now the bellboys and Waiters moved quickly, guiding guests away from danger, shielding them from falling glass and scattered debris. Receptionists grabbed phones to call emergency services, their hands steady under pressure. The guests, seeing the staff act decisively, began to trust the situation. Even the previously arrogant ones followed directions silently. Realizing the maid's authority was absolute, the maid moved swiftly across the lobby, assessing the damage. "Manager," she said firmly, "ensure that all guests are accounted for and safe." Bellboys form a line to clear debris. Waiters assist with evacuation of items at risk. Receptionists secure important documents immediately. Staff obeyed instantly, their movements precise and efficient. Under her calm guidance, the chaos slowly began to subside. The guests watched silently, awe and respect filling their eyes. They realized that the maid's leadership was not just about rules, it was about courage, calmness, and the ability to act under pressure. Suddenly, a cry echoed from the back of the lobby. A young child, staying with their parents in the hotel, had wandered too close to a broken window. The maid's eyes snapped toward the child. Without hesitation, she dashed forward, scooping the child into her arms just as a shard of glass fell. To the floor nearby, the parents gasped, relief flooding their faces. "Thank you," they cried, their voices shaking. The maid nodded, placing the child safely behind a staff member. "Stay there," she said softly, her voice calm but firm. "Do not come near the debris until it is safe." The staff worked even faster, clearing broken glass, securing the entrance, and assisting the delivery truck driver, who was apologetic and flustered. Under the maid's watchful eye, the crisis was turning into an organized effort rather than chaos. The guests whispered among themselves, admiration shining in their faces. The icy necklace woman murmured quietly, She handles everything. Nothing scares her." The maid glanced at the staff, pride in her eyes. "Remember," she said softly, "even in chaos, calmness and teamwork solve problems. Fear does not help. Only action guided by patience and integrity works." The delivery truck driver, embarrassed, approached the maid. I'm so sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." The maid shook her head calmly. "Accidents happen," she said softly. "What matters is how we respond. Help us clean up, follow directions, and everyone will be safe." The staff nodded, moving efficiently with renewed purpose. Even the guests offered assistance, small gestures of respect. Realizing that the maid had turned a dangerous situation into an opportunity to show courage, calmness, and teamwork. Manager finally breathed a sigh of relief as emergency services arrived, handling the aftermath. Thanks to her, he whispered to a colleague, no one was hurt. She kept everyone calm and safe. The maid turned to the guests, her voice soft but steady. "You have witnessed how calmness, respect, and teamwork manage even the most sudden challenges. Remember this lesson. Authority is not only about rules, it is about action, courage, and care for others." The guests nodded silently, humbled once more. Even the previously arrogant ones could not deny her strength, her calmness, and her ability to lead under pressure. The staff whispered quietly among themselves, pride shining in their eyes. They had learned more than ever before that their leader was not just a figure of authority, she was a protector, a guide, and a source of calm in every storm. The icy necklace woman whispered softly to the others, She saved that child. She saved all of us from panic no one could handle. This better." The maid exhaled quietly, surveying the lobby now free of debris. Everything was under control. The guests were safe. The staff was proud. She had once again proven that calm authority, courage, and integrity could overcome even the most sudden crisis. The chandeliers shimmered above, golden light reflecting on the polished floors. The lobby had survived chaos, yet emerged stronger, more united, and filled with respect for the maid's unwavering leadership. She closed her notebook gently, her calm presence filling the room. "Let this be a reminder," she said softly, "that respect, courage, and teamwork turn chaos into order. And those who follow these values will will always find safety, pride, and honor here. The staff nodded, inspired, ready to continue serving with dedication. The guests watched quietly, humbled, and thoughtful. Their admiration for the maid, deeper than ever. The lobby, once a stage for arrogance and mockery, now stood as a symbol of courage, calm authority, and unity. And at the center of it all, the maid, calm, steady, and resolute, remained the heart and soul of the hotel. The lobby, now calm and orderly, felt alive with a quiet pride. The staff moved efficiently, heads held high, their confidence strengthened by the maid's leadership. The guests, humbled and thoughtful, watched silently, fully aware of the lessons they had learned from her over the past days. The maid stood at the center, notebook in hand, her calm gaze sweeping across everyone in the room. Everything seemed perfect, till a sudden commotion broke the peace. A group of VIP guests arrived unexpectedly, their presence announced by a flash of cameras and a small crowd of onlookers. They carried themselves with confidence, expecting luxury and indulgence. But none of them knew the lessons the maid had already taught the staff and previous guests. The manager looked anxious, whispering they're very important people. We can't upset them. The maid shook her head calmly, her voice firm. VIP or not, respect is mandatory. Rules apply to everyone. We will follow our standards, no exceptions. Staff straightened instantly, inspired by her unwavering confidence. Even the previously arrogant guests held their breath, sensing another test was about to unfold. The VIP leader, tall man with an air of superiority, stepped forward. This hotel is supposed to be the best in the city, he said. Haughtily, we expect immediate service, special treatment, and the finest accommodations. The maid's gaze remained calm and steady. You are welcome here, she said softly, but all rules apply. Disrespect will not be tolerated. Staff must be treated with dignity. Your luxury does not excuse rudeness or arrogance. The VIPs exchanged puzzled glances, unused to being addressed this way. One woman stepped forward boldly. I don't take orders from a maid, she said sharply. We are paying customers, and we demand priority. The maid's calm eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice remained soft yet commanding. You may have wealth, but that does not give you the right to insult others. You will follow the rules of this hotel. Failure to comply means you will leave immediately. A tense silence filled the lobby as the staff held their breath, watching their leader handle the challenge with grace. The previous guests, humbled by her authority, whispered to one another, awe in their voices. The VIP leader smirked, attempting to assert control. I am important. You cannot treat me like this, he said. The maid's voice cut through the air like steel, calm but firm. Importance is measured by character, not wealth. You are welcome here if you respect the rules. Otherwise, you must leave. The manager stepped closer, whispering nervously, She's risking confrontation. The maid shook her head. No, she said quietly. I am upholding the values of this hotel. That is never a risk, it is duty. Suddenly, one of the VIPs raised their voice, shouting, We will report this. This is unacceptable. The maid remained calm, her voice unwavering. Report if you must. I have the legal authority, the support of my staff, and the loyalty of everyone here. Disrespect will not be tolerated. A hush fell over the lobby. Even the previously rebellious guests watched silently, realizing the depth of her authority. The staff, inspired and confident, stood ready to support her if necessary. The VIP leader, realizing he could not intimidate her, finally nodded slowly. Yes, we understand, he muttered, his arrogance tempered by her calm presence. The maid's gaze softened slightly, her voice gentle but firm. Good. Respect and dignity must be maintained at all times. We serve everyone fairly, but no one is above the rules. The staff moved efficiently, escorting the VIPs to their rooms. While maintaining the hotel's standards of service, the guests, humbled and thoughtful, whispered among themselves. Marveling at her calm authority, the icy necklace woman murmured quietly, She handles everyone the same way. VIPs, staff, Guests, no one can intimidate her. The maid nodded to the staff quietly, her eyes shining with pride. Remember, she said softly, even when tested by wealth, arrogance, or status, we act with fairness, patience, and calm authority. That is how respect is maintained, and that is how this hotel remains a place of dignity. The guests, silent and humbled, understood fully. Even those who had once mocked her now saw the truth. True authority comes from character, integrity, and calm leadership. The VIPs, having learned the lesson, began to act with caution and respect. Even the previously arrogant guests observed, quietly absorbing the way the maid handled every challenge. The staff whispered among themselves, pride and admiration shining in their eyes. The bellboys, waiters, and receptionists finally felt secure and valued under her leadership. The maid exhaled quietly, surveying the lobby. Another challenge had come, testing her patience and emotional strength. Yet she had faced it with calm authority, fairness, and dignity. Her power was not in fear, but in respect. And that respect extended to everyone present. She closed her notebook gently, a symbol of authority, integrity, and unwavering leadership. Let this be a reminder, she said softly, that wealth and status do not dictate behavior. Character, respect, and patience govern all. Those who forget this will be reminded. The lobby shimmered under the chandelier's golden light, alive with pride, respect, and admiration. The staff moved with renewed purpose. The guests remained silent and thoughtful, and even the VIPs acknowledged the maid's calm power at the center of it all. The maid stood steady, composed, and fully in control. Another unexpected twist faced and overcome, proving once again that true leadership is measured not by fear or money, but by courage, integrity, and unwavering calmness. The hotel lobby glimmered under the soft golden light of the chandeliers. The staff moved with purpose, heads held high, smiles bright. The guests, humbled by everything they had experienced, watched silently, reflecting on the lessons they had learned. The maid stood at the center, notebook in hand, calm and composed. Her journey from being mocked, underestimated, and humiliated had transformed into one of complete authority and respect. Every challenge, every arrogant guest, every unexpected twist had been faced with courage, patience, and integrity. Yet today, a final test awaited one that would determine the full scope of her triumph. The doors opened slowly, and a group of prominent hotel inspectors entered. Their expressions were sharp, critical, and calculating. They had come to evaluate the hotel for a prestigious award, recognition of excellence that no one could claim lightly. The staff froze momentarily, unsure how the inspectors would react. The guests, watching silently, held their breath. Knowing that this was the moment that could change everything, the maid stepped forward, her calm gaze meeting each inspector. "Welcome," she said softly but firmly. "This hotel operates on rules of respect, integrity, and dignity. You will witness our standards, our values, and our dedication firsthand." The inspectors nodded, their pens and notebooks ready. The staff moved confidently, guided by the maid's presence. Even the previously arrogant guests, now humbled and respectful, observed quietly, amazed at the transformation. The lead inspector, a stern woman with sharp eyes, spoke first. "We have heard stories about this hotel," she said. "Staff and guest behavior, management, authority. We will now see if the tales are true." The maid's calm gaze swept across the room. She gestured to the staff. "Show them your dedication. Show them the respect you maintain for one another and for every guest. Demonstrate the integrity that guides your every action." The staff moved like a perfectly synchronized team. Bellboys carried luggage efficiently. Waiters served with care and precision. The receptionists managed the front desk with patience and professionalism. The inspectors observed silently, taking notes, clearly impressed. The maid turned to the guests, including the previously arrogant ones. "Observe how dignity and respect shape the behavior of everyone here," she said softly. "Even the most challenging guests learn the value of humility and proper conduct." The icy necklace woman whispered to a companion, her voice filled with awe. She changed everything. Everyone behaves differently because of her. The inspectors exchanged glances, clearly impressed. They approached the maid, their expressions shifting from skepticism to admiration. Your leadership is remarkable, the lead inspector said finally. Not just the rules, but how you inspire respect, loyalty, and integrity.
Oh.
This hotel is exceptional because of you. The maid's eyes softened, a small, humble smile appearing. Thank you, she said quietly.
Right.
It is not only my effort, it's the staff, the guests, who follow the rules, and everyone who learns respect contributes to the hotel's excellence. The inspectors nodded, clearly satisfied. This hotel deserves the highest recognition, the lead inspector said firmly. You have proven that respect, patience, and integrity are more valuable than wealth, arrogance, or fear. We will recommend this hotel for the highest award of excellence. Cheer rose quietly among the staff, pride shining in their eyes. Even the guests, humbled and reflective, clapped softly. Acknowledging the maid's remarkable achievement, the manager approached, tears glistening in his eyes. You have done what no one believed possible, he whispered. You turned this hotel into a place of dignity, respect, and pride. Everyone admires you. The maid nodded, closing her notebook gently. It was never about admiration. She said softly, it was about fairness, integrity, and calm leadership. That is the true measure of success. Suddenly, the previously arrogant guests stepped forward. They bowed their heads slightly, humbled. We were wrong, one of them said quietly. We mocked you, underestimated you, and failed to respect you. Now we see the truth. You earned our respect, our admiration, and even our loyalty. The maid's eyes softened, her calm authority still present.
Thank you.
She said simply, learn from your mistakes, and respect will always follow you. The lobby, once a place of arrogance, chaos, and mockery, now stood as a symbol of calm authority, integrity, and dignity. The staff, proud and confident, knew they were part of something extraordinary. The guests, humbled and thoughtful, understood the true meaning of respect and humility. The maid walked slowly across the lobby, taking in the scene. She had faced challenges from wealthy guests, VIPs, sudden crises, and personal tests. Each had tested her patience, leadership, and emotional resilience. And each had proven that calm authority, fairness, integrity could overcome arrogance, fear, and chaos. Her mentor, who had returned quietly to witness the final moments, nodded approvingly. You have truly become a leader, he whispered. Strong, fair, and unwavering. This hotel is a reflection of your character. The maid smiled softly, the weight of triumph and responsibility settling within her. This is only the beginning, she said quietly. Respect, integrity, and dignity must be upheld every day, in every action, for every person. Shimmered overhead, golden light reflecting on the polished floors. The staff moved with renewed purpose, proud and inspired. The guests watched silently, humbled, reflective, and changed forever. The hotel had transformed completely, not through wealth, power, or fear, but through the calm authority, courage, and unwavering integrity of a maid who had once been underestimated. And at the center of it all, standing tall, calm, and composed. She was not just a maid, she was a leader, a guide, and a symbol of respect and dignity. The staff, the guests, and even the VIPs understood the truth. True power is earned, not bought. Respect is commanded through integrity, not fear. And leadership is measured by courage, patience, and fairness. As the final applause echoed softly through the lobby, the maid closed her notebook one last time, her calm gaze sweeping. Across the room, everything had changed. The hotel, the staff, the guests, and even the maid herself had grown stronger, wiser, and more humble. And in that golden light, with pride, respect, and dignity filling every corner, she knew one thing for certain, true. Triumph comes not from wealth or status, but from integrity, courage, and the unwavering commitment to do what is right.